And we're moving on to petition 2016-17, an initial review of the petition alleging that county officers or employees are in violation of section 2-83A3 and 2-83B, fair treatment of the Hawaii County Code due to the unfair treatment by the building department. And here we have a response letter dated September 27th as well from the Department of Public Works.
I consider a lack of response to a written communication to be discourteous or unfair treatment under the Ethics Code, number one. Number two is, to background this issue on number 17, is facing, as a vendor of building materials, which is what I am, and draftsman, facing increasing months and months and months of delays in building departments. I took a look at the code under the code exemptions that are referenced in my letter to Warren Lee. And unique to the Hawaii County Code, and it's not in the 2006 IBC or anywhere else, and it's not even in other county codes. A new code section was adopted by council a couple of years ago, which exempted accessory structures on agricultural land of 600 square feet and less. Now, with that knowledge in hand of the new code and appreciating its impact on agricultural lands and for my business, I spent considerable funds and traveled to China, where I had agricultural utility buildings designed to my specification that I thought would provide a good value to the citizens of this community. And I invested in them and I brought them in. Now, out of the blue, for me, in July, early July, I got a call from Mr. Neil Erickson, and I think his call was well-intended. I think Neil was wanting to be of service to me. And in his call, he said to me that he had seen the advertising for my buildings, making reference to the code and the permit exemption, and he wanted to let me know that he felt I was misrepresenting the code in my advertising. So that was a preemptive move from the building department to me without any application in place. I just got a call. Now, my response to Mr. Erickson on that call was, well, I don't want to be misrepresenting the code. I mean, what are you talking about? And he explained to me a number of different implications in what was written in this code. Now, I've been dealing with building codes for 40-something years. I speak English and read it pretty well. And when I read a section of code that says, as you can read it in your file, that accessory structures on agricultural land, less than 600 feet are exempt from code, I take it to mean what it says pretty much, and I invested $100,000 on that purpose. So Mr. Erickson explained to me that accessory structures implies that there must be a residence on the property or a permit for one. Now, in my mind, I'm like, well, there's already an exemption for 120 square foot buildings on residential land. And if the county council, in its wisdom, is expanding that minimum to 600 square feet for agricultural land, how does it become necessary that there be a residential purpose? But, and in addition, he said, well, and there has to be commercial agricultural operations. And he's also said that there has to be a minimum of 2 acres on the land, and a residence. And I'm going, well, listen, I said I have a 65-acre farm, and it's a mile from my house. So you're telling me that I have a house over here on one parcel, and I have 65 acres of farmland over here, and I can't put up, a utility building or a chicken coop or something. And he goes, no, you can. But everybody else has to have a residence on the property. And that confused me. But my ultimate response to Mr. Erickson, was reasonable and polite. I said, listen, Neil, if your interpretation of these things is true and correct, just show me where in the code it says that, and I'll be perfectly happy. I'm not trying to change the code. I'm not trying to appeal the code. If I was, I'd be before the appeals board. And you have a copy of this, and here's a whole list of utility and miscellaneous structures And two out of the 14 say accessory to a 1 or 2 story family residence or accessory to a residential occupancy. So on the moments when the code wants to have something dependent upon a residential use, the code says so. So when Neil is telling me that it's implied by just using the term accessory structure, I'm not willing to accept that. In 1959, the county board of supervisors basically illegal subdivided 80,000 lots on this island, mostly in Puna, some elsewhere. And they called them ag land. Now, Helene Hale told me personally, we never expected anybody to move here. This was supposed to be a tax mine. People would buy them, they'd pay taxes, they'd never come, they'd never want any services. So I think in their minds somehow in the policy of this department, what we have going on is that there is a mental policy, not an official policy, not a code policy, that wants to treat one group of agricultural landowners differently from another group of agricultural landowners. And they're taking this as an intention, perhaps a policy passed down by generations, but not in the code, to spread this disinformation that you have to have a residence or a permit for one on the property to have an exempted utility building, that you have to have 2-acre minimum, that you have to have commercial agricultural operations underway, and that it doesn't apply to me. I'm okay. Mr. Tucker, it's okay. You can put one on your property. They can't. Now, I'm flattered to think that I would be privileged enough that the county building department would allow me to put something up on my property without a permit. Unfortunately, in this situation, my business, the way I feed my kids and pay their college educations, depends on profitably selling products that people want. And if the County of Hawaii Building Department is informing my potential customers that they can't buy my product, and they cannot demonstrate in the code where that lies in the law, then we have an ethics complaint.
State your name and any comments.
Good afternoon, Brandon Gonzalez, Deputy Director for the Department of Public Works.
Neil Erickson, Plans Examining Manager for the Department of Public Works Building Division.
Are we saying that every building that Mr. Tucker is going to sell will require a building permit? Which I think is his argument, saying we are restraining his trade or going to impact on how he can market his building. I don't think we're saying that. What we are saying in this case is the actual use of the structure he has currently erected does not fall within an agricultural use because it is being used as like a show model. That in and of itself, in checking with the planning department and with our building department, triggers permit requirements. It doesn't fall within our exemption language for accessory structure. Now, if someone were to buy the structure and put it on an appropriate lot, then meet the criteria, yeah, it may not require a permit. The county can't make that general blanket statement though, because it does come down to the characteristics of the land, where it's placed, and the circumstances surrounding it.
I don't make this up. I research a lot. This box is full of codes and commentaries that we rely on to make our decisions, right? And give people guidance. And in general, yes, I do try to help people find exceptions if they comply and meet the sections of the codes. So in the case of Mr. Tucker, there seems to be a disconnect, like Mr. Gonzalez says. His building that's advertising for sale, open to the public to view, and any others that he sells, they're two different matters, really. So I'm not sure how to address that, but at any rate, the structure that has the advertising on it may be correct. You know, you may be able to buy one of these structures and put it up on a property, and it may be permit exempt. But like Mr. Gonzalez says, you know, the premise is you start with a building permit, and if you meet all the qualifications, yeah, could be exempt. And I actually have no objection to that. And this never would have been brought up to the property owner or to Mr. Tucker if someone hadn't called and asked me the very question, is this building in fact possible to be exempt from our codes?
If you disagree with the determination, I would say the Board of Appeals. If you get a written determination that says something, you don't agree with it, that's independent of ethics. Now, if he purposely lied or did something like that or was picking on you, well, then sure, that's the ethics code. But there's no evidence of that you're being treated differently, as
Well,
I
I have submitted evidence of that.
What specifically?
When Mr. Erickson told me that there was a requirement for a permitted house or structure on the property, that there was a requirement for agricultural operations on the property, and that there was a requirement for a 2-acre minimum on the property, that applied to everybody but me.
Would you, Mr. Erickson, make a
I
response?
think you have copies of all of the email correspondence, and it's clear that there is a disconnect between our county code permit exceptions and the state exceptions, right? And the fact that the building that he erected on, that he claims is not his building, but advertises his buildings for sale on that building, is not used for, the intended purpose. It's an advertising purpose. It's not exempt from the code, right? So there's 3 different things going on here. So it's hard for me to help him understand that when I'm clearly not even able to do it to you, or for you, rather.
For the public.
That's fine. I support the motion to dismiss for the grounds stated. To me, this was borderline than the previous case on, we would expect, courteousness and responding to emails quickly and all that. But the big picture issue is really this issue about whether it's permitted or not. And that's not really what, you need a permit or not. And that's not what we're here for.